So this is going to be one of our big, long test questions. I'm trying to add audio over this video because obviously that has not been working. So first time ever doing this, so I hope everything goes smoothly. We will see how this works. Starting out with, you guys have this problem here. It says that we need to plot our 2 points. Okay, so the 2 points that we are going to need to plot are that point A and that point B, which I hope, yep, there we go. So negative 2, 5, and 1, 3. As I'm going through, guys, these are simple points that you guys can get. So you just need to go down to that graph below, make sure that you plot and then also label. So I've got my point A there, and then at point B, I have point 1, 3. So I'm going to make sure I graph that at point 1, 3. Move on to part B. It says find the slope of the line passing through points A and B. You can do this a couple ways. One of the ways that you can do this is just finding your point slope, or sorry, not your point slope, your slope form. So identify which is point 1 and which is point 2. So I've got M equals 3 minus 5. So my point 1 minus my point 2. My y sub 2 minus my y sub 1. Okay. Over... Then I'm going to have my x sub 2, which would be 1, minus my x sub 1, which would be a negative 2. So I have then 3 minus 5, which is negative 2. And those two negatives make a positive, so that's 1 plus 2, which is 3. So negative 2/3 is going to be my slope. You can also obviously count. So I go down 2. So that would be at a negative 2. And then I can go to the right 3, which would give me a positive 3. So again, I have negative 2 over a positive 3, which also gives me negative 2/3. So part A and part B are nothing that I feel like are too difficult for you guys to do. Should hopefully be some easy points for you guys figuring out. Now part C is where I think that we get to our first issue. Okay, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And it says that we need to find the equation of the line passing through point B, which is at 1, 3, and it needs to be perpendicular to the line above. Okay, so perpendicular to the line above. Well, the line above is negative 2/3. So when I find the slope that is perpendicular to that, I'm going to need to find the opposite reciprocal. Okay. So opposite of that negative 2/3 would be a positive. So I've got a negative 2/3, the positive 2/3. And then I've got to flip that fraction. So the reciprocal of 2/3 would be 3/2. So now I have my slope and I also have a point. So I would want to use my point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Okay, and I'm just going to plug in my values. So this is y minus 3 equals 3/2 for my slope, parentheses x minus my x sub 1 would be 1. And then from there, I'm just going to simplify. So I would need to distribute my 3/2. So I get that it equals 3/2 x minus 3/2. And then I've got y minus 3 on the other side. So I would need to add 3 to both sides. And when I add 3 to both sides, I get that y equals 3/2 x plus 3/2. You got a negative 3/2 plus 3. That's really a negative 3/2 plus 6/2. So just gives you a positive 3/2. Okay. Now we go to part D. Okay, last part. And on part D, we are going to have to graph something back up on that graph. Okay, just showing there how we use that perpendicular to create that 90-degree angle at point B. So back down to part D here. It says let C equal negative 1y. So we are creating a right triangle, and that point C is going to be our third point. And that point C is at negative 1y. So I want you guys to think about points because that point tells us something important. Okay? Notice it also says that we're finding that number y, and it says that part C should help. So what did we find in part C? Well, we found that equation up there. Y equals 3/2 x plus 3/2. So that should help us find our solution. Okay, so back to that point, C equals -1y. Well, that points, remember, are in the xy form. So what that tells us is our x value that we're looking at is -1. So to find my y, I need to plug in that -1 for my x. And then now I can just solve this to figure out what the y value is. So that's y equals -3/2 plus 3/2, which gives me that y equals 0. So my point C is going to be -1 for my x and 0 for my y. So I have found the third point of this triangle. Okay, the last thing that you guys need to do is you need to go up and you need to plot your point C and then finish drawing your triangle here. Okay, so I'm going to go up, plot point C at -1, 0. Make sure to label it. And then I'm going to just connect the dots here. And you guys can see there, point B, I have created my right angle. Okay, and that is pretty much it. Hopefully this works now.